Brewing espresso for the first time can seem a little intimidating. The wands, the tamp, the pressure gauges. So here is a complete beginner's guide to brewing espresso, brought to you by me, a complete beginner. Fortunately, I've had some expert help. Dan from Home Barista lent me one of his fancy coffee machines and gave me a primer on how it works.
Let's pretend you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Just for fun.
We don't even have to pretend.
Now I'm pulling espresso shots that, at least to my unsophisticated palate, taste as good as anything I've had at a coffee shop recently. I'm going to walk you through the basics of brewing with some pretty foolproof steps and share some of the tips of dialing in your setup that Dan gave me. We'll just cover the basics here. To go deeper, I'd highly recommend a trip to homebarista.com for reviews, how-to guides, and a really active forum. When you Google something about espresso, it's usually a thread from Home Barista that comes up. This machine is an ECM Syntronica. It's a pretty fancy one. Yours might look a little different, but most have the same basic elements. There's the group head, that's where the water comes out. A basket filled with ground coffee is added to a portafilter, and the portafilter connects to that group head. There's a temperature setting. I'm brewing at 90 Celsius, and a pressure gauge. We'll be using 9 bar. There's other stuff too, like the steam wand and the hot water spout, but we're just brewing a shot of espresso here, so we don't need those just now. One other thing that you'll need is a grinder. Espresso has a fine grind, and getting the grind size right is a crucial step. So we grind some beans into the basket, tamp them down, put the basket in the portafilter, turn on the machine, and marvel at that golden espresso flowing into your cup. Easy, right? Well, let's just back up a bit and talk about those steps. So first up, you'll need some coffee beans. You can buy coffee beans specifically for espresso, and these are dark, roasted, and have a more intense flavor than regular coffee beans. I'm using these beans from Counterculture. They're a bit lighter than an espresso roast and bring a nutty chocolate flavor. The amount of beans to use depends upon your basket size. I'm using a 17-gram basket, so I'm grinding 17 grams of coffee beans. That's enough to make a double shot of espresso. Double shot, that sounds like a lot, but most espresso-based drinks like a cappuccino and a latte, they're all based on double shots. It depends on the beans, of course, but we're normally talking around 60 to 100 milligrams of caffeine here for a double shot, which is about the same caffeine as a cup of drip coffee. Next, we need to get the grinds level in the basket and then push down with a tamp. Getting everything level is important to avoid something called channeling. Basically, the water will take the path of least resistance. If one part of the basket has a thinner layer of coffee than the other, that's where most of the water will go, resulting in under-extracted coffee. Dan has some tips.
So put your fingers on the side like this, right? You can use that to monitor whether you're really straight. Then you tamp, right?
Okay, now it's flush.
We give it a little bit of a twirl so you don't leave grounds on there and make a mess, and that's all there is to it.
Now apparently you want to apply about 30 pounds of pressure using the tamp. I hold the tamp like a doorknob, push down, and give it a good press. The tamped coffee is now firmly in place in the basket. Lock in the portafilter with the basket to the group head, add a cup, and well, here's where we're going to turn art into repeatable science. We're going to aim for some absolutes here, and if we don't hit them, then we'll know what changes we need to make next time. So first of all, the water to coffee ratio. Well, for espresso, it can vary, but a good starting point is 1 to 2. That means for every 1 part of coffee, we should yield 2 parts espresso. So my basket with 17 grams of coffee beans should yield 34 grams of espresso. So that we know we've pulled 34 grams, put the cup on a scale and tire it out. Just before hitting 34 grams, we're going to stop the water flow. By the time the water flow does stop, we should be pretty close to actually having 34 grams. The second variable is brewing time. Optimal extraction time varies, but a good rule of thumb here is to start with around 25 seconds. So it should take about 25 seconds from starting the machine to generate 34 grams of espresso. Let's give it a try. Pull the lever, watch the coffee flow, and stop just before 34 grams. If you yield 34 grams quicker than around 25 seconds, your coffee grinds are probably too coarse. Grind finer. If it takes longer, your coffee grind may be too fine. For me, this whole measure then adjust grind size technique makes it easy to dial in my grinder, and it will often need adjusting. Just using the same beans here over the course of a week, I found I needed to adjust the grind size as the beans aged. If you're good at this like Dan, you can just look at a given grind and say, yeah, that's gonna take 15 seconds.
Yeah, Dan predicted 15 seconds.
Wow.
We have it on the camera. Don't worry. Everyone proved right there. The timer said 15 seconds. Dan was right.
Dan can also tell when it's time to cut the water off just by looking at the flow.
You'll see when it's like this, it says keep going, keep going. And then you'll see towards the end, it'll start pulling up like this.
Yeah.
And then when it goes all to hell, what'll happen is this little bubble form right like there. And that's when you're basically just pulling, water that had brown stuff in it.
A piece of advice Dan gave me also was to taste your mistakes.
It's always good to taste your mistakes.
Yeah.
So I want you to give this a taste. The absolute dead giveaway is this has got no body at all.
It's a great way to learn what under and over extracted espresso tastes like. Brew for 15 seconds and then brew for 45 seconds and see if you can tell the difference. Tamp unevenly, do a really bad job of it and see what it looks like. My takeaway here is that with some scales and a timer, learning how to brew a basic espresso is relatively straightforward. And while I'm sure my brews will not be winning any competitions just yet, they taste coffee shop quality to me. And look, if you're just starting out too, I would love to hear from you. Let me know how you're getting on in the comments.